Welcome back to the Mandarin Blueprint podcast. My name is Phil Crimmins, and I am here with Chris Young, who has kindly agreed to talk to us about his experiences on the Mandarin Blueprint method. And before we get into anything specific about the method, I'm always curious, what got you into wanting to learn Chinese? And maybe you can sort of frame that in a self-introduction.
Sure. This is actually a very long, ongoing project for me. I've been into, I got into it years and years ago via Hong Kong martial arts films.
Okay.
That was sort of my initial intro into the language itself. And so I guess it was more sort of a blend of Cantonese or Mandarin, depending on which video cassette was available from the store.
Mm-hmm.
So that sort of got me into the whole language part of Chinese. And so over the years, I would pick up books, here and there and try to learn some. It was funny listening to some of your commentary about the rote writing of characters and the brute force method, because I've definitely gone down that path.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to learn. So, unfortunately, most of the time that didn't stick, and so I'd put it aside for a few years, and then I'd come back to it for a while, and so this has been going on for the better part of a few decades, actually.
Oh, right.
Until so last year, we were fortunate enough to actually travel to China for several weeks. And I think just being there sort of rekindled the spirit of wanting to learn. And so I came back and poked around and ran across Mandarin Blueprint.
Cool. Nice. So what, how about your professional life? Is there anything about learning Chinese that you're expecting to influence that side of things?
Yeah, that's, I looked at that question and was wondering, would there really be, I think a while back, so the industry I'm in is the biotech industry. And there are definitely opportunities and companies in China where in the past that could have been something I could have done. Maybe if I had language skills, potentially look at a position over there. I think at this point, that's probably not feasible. So most of what it is for me is going to be personal, really.
Sure. Well, in a way that can be, sometimes that's like, while the professional goals can certainly be motivating, sometimes if you can manage to find the goals that are simply associated with interest in the language itself and sort of just your own personal desire to watch the, martial arts films and not need the translations or things like that, that can sometimes be even a sort of a deeper motivation because it's a motivation that exists for its own sake. So that can, sometimes it's hard to find that comparatively, but it's also, it has the potential to be even more gratifying. So I totally understand that. And actually, for me, I started off thinking like, I'll do this so that I can have a better skill set on my CV, but it quickly changed as I started to learn the language because I found myself very interested in how the language was structured. And I sort of realized bit by bit, I was like, wow, this is really cool how it's sort of changing how I think and stuff. So I'm sure that you'll have no problem as long as you keep going. So that's cool. So nice. So apart from that, so you're basically, you're looking at the situation where you're interested in it because of decades of, seeing various Chinese cultural things. When you were in China, what part of China did you travel around, and like, what memories stick out to you of your time there? I'm curious.
Yeah, so we did sort of a semicircle. We started in Beijing, and then went down to Xi'an, and then Chengdu, and
nice.
then over to Shanghai.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, little loop there. Nice.
Right. Yeah, so it was sort of we had 3 weeks to fit this in, and so we figured we'd do sort of a greatest hits, mostly kind of exploratory to see where we might want to go back. So that going back is still on the list if we can ever manage to do that. But really for us, it was, like I said, we wanted to see sort of the major things. It's funny. People ask like what we like the most about it. And there's the obvious sort of key sites and things that you see, the Great Wall, the Terracotta Warriors, the pandas, ton of other stuff. But really for me, is sort of the more off the beaten path, at least for Western travelers type of stuff that I've seen. Like, we went out to some smaller towns and like went up to some mountains and did cable car rides out there. just in general though, just the walking around the cities and how friendly the people are,
Hmm.
was just really surprising to me. I did not expect it, but at the same time, I didn't expect it.
Sure.
Plus how easy it was to get around. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I was just stunned with just how simple it is to, ride a bus, ride a train, take a cab, take all sorts of stuff, not speaking really any Mandarin at all.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
It's the infrastructure projects they've done, especially since 2008, is it's so fast and so vast that we're like it's almost you don't have time to be amazed. It's like in 12 years what they've done with just the rail system alone, and then
yes.
if you include subways in that as well, it's crazy. It's like a big web they've built across the country, and what it's a very it's quite a strong way to deal with their rural poverty problem, because, or at least attempt to, no, I shouldn't say deal with as if it's like it's over, but it's a good way to help people who are in rural areas have an avenue that isn't overly expensive to get to an area with more opportunity. It's like every day I hear about new train routes to some city I've never heard of, and I think, well,
Mm.
for all those people in that city, now a train ticket's like something that could get you to a place where you could find a much better job or something like that. So it's really quite impressive. Heck, even my neighborhood, they just opened two subway lines about 100 meters from my apartment complex that they've been working on for the past 4 years, and it's amazing. He's really easy to get around, so I can definitely dig on that.
Yeah,
And
that and and I would be remiss if I didn't also say the food. I mean, that was
oh
a big part of us going there was to sort of eat our way through China and see the different regional cuisines.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, you can talk. I can talk about food all day. You're catching me at the end of I every 6 months I do a little extended fast, and I'm on the last day of a 5-day fast today. So I'm thinking about that food too. So I
All right. Well,
haven't been.
apologies for bringing that up.
Oh no, 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 it's fine. I actually, it's the hardest part of a fast is like day 2, so I'm fine. But yeah, but I've been thinking about like yesterday I found myself musing. I was like, wow, so much great cuisine in China. I was like, I wonder why I'm thinking about this.
Hmm.
but but yeah, do you recall specifically the Sichuan food?
Oh yeah, that was actually one of the focal points for us because we love that style of food, and having it over here in the States, we're like, okay, we think we've found some decent places.
Mm,
But truthfully, after going there and coming back, it's no,
yeah,
night and day. I mean,
yeah, yeah. It's really amazing here. Any little shop you go into, you can have that mala flavor, which is the sort of numbing pepper plus spicy. That's the
mm-hmm.
combo they go for here. They're very proud of it. They're always like, yes, we can eat spicy here.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, it's funny. It's a kind of spicy they can eat. If you give them like more chili pepper based or like cayenne pepper based stuff, they'll find that to be too spicy. But if you like, or more like kind of Mexican type of spicy, they'll also find too spicy. But if it's
Huh.
there, it's a different type of spicy. It's the only word to describe what it is, but it definitely doesn't taste like, say, a good Tex-Mex meal or something like that.
No.
It's different in terms of the spice, but still, though, people really like it here. It's funny, in Chengdu, there's no lines for like a club at night, but there's long lines for the hot pot restaurant. So it's
Yeah.
like the Friday night hangout is the hot pot restaurant, which is pretty funny. Um, Awesome. Well, that must have been such a cool experience. I definitely hope you have a chance to get back here soon. I mean, certainly, China for the past 6 months, it's getting kind of crazy. For the past 6 months, this is end of October 2020. It's been just normal. I mean, there's public
Really.
transportation. You're required to wear masks, but like other than that, it's just been normal life. You can go to restaurants. You can do all the things that you need to do, and I hope that soon things can get back to that in other parts of the world, because as soon as they do, I'm sure China will be happy to open back up to them, because everything's fine here. They'd like to have the tourism again, I'm sure. So
Yeah.
yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about finding the Mandarin Blueprint method, and what your experiences were getting into that. So um first of all, how did you find us? Was it just cruising around the internet, or did you read an article or something?
No, this was completely random.
Mm,
Like I said, after going to China and coming back, it sort of refocused me on wanting to learn, and so I spent some time just searching around on the internet, and seeing what was out there, different sites, what people wrote about it. You know, I don't even recall exactly where I ran across the initial link to the site for you guys, but you know, I clicked on it. I started reading through some of the material you had, and you know, I mean, I'm sure we'll dig into a little bit more, but that's sort of what caught me, just the random search and then the initial jump to the site.
Right, right. Okay, cool. So it was basically, you know, once you were on the site, you read around and gave it a shot. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, that's what we're hoping for. Luke works very hard on the website. Like in the company, we obviously both share some roles in various things, primarily in the teaching. But in terms of Luke is very focused on the front end, the website, and the presentation of everything. So I'm sure he'll be happy to hear that. And
Yeah.
you know, I focus a little bit more on the course and what's going to happen, like, you know, way down the line after you're a member already for years and years. But so and then you get into the course. Did you start a free trial, or did you do pronunciation mastery first, or how did you get started?
Yeah. So, you know, I don't remember exactly. I think I may have done initially a free trial for like a week or so, but I know pretty quickly I jumped into the pronunciation course. I said, you know, if I'm going to do this, I might as well do it. And so I started the pronunciation course. And I think after just being in that shortly, I was pretty much hooked. I said, okay, at the very least, I'm going to work my way through this course and see where that takes me, and go from there. And, you know, it didn't take long to decide that this was the right path.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah, you know, Luke did such a great job with that course. So it's, you know, I always, every now and then we'll get a comment and somebody will ask a question about a specific thing that Luke said, and I'll have to go back through the video. And we made those videos back in like early 2018. And I was looking through some of the videos and I was like, man, he does such a good job of explaining all the little details. And I'd forgotten, you know, and it's like, so yeah, I'm sure that was a pretty good experience. And so did you find yourself confident that you were able to say the different syllables correctly after that course?
Yeah. I mean, at least I had a sense that, okay, I think I know what I'm supposed to be saying when I see this particular sound, whether it's actually coming out of my mouth the way I'm hearing it internally, who knows? But, you know, and you both have spoken to that particular dilemma numerous times, right? About, you know, further on getting somebody to speak with, you know, shadowing people and stuff like that. But yeah, in terms of how I felt confidence-wise about distinguishing the different sounds and being able to say them, yeah, I mean, I felt like I got to the end of that course and had a pretty solid basis in all that.
Yeah.
Now, that said, it's still something that I do pop back in every so often to refresh, you know, to make sure that I'm not sliding into bad habits. So it's good for both the intro as well as just continual refreshment of things that you already know.
Couldn't agree more. Yeah, pronunciation, as we established very early, is the kind of thing that you never completely stop thinking about. You know, it's it just becomes less of a focus over time. But you know, I started learning Chinese in 2013 properly. I mean, I'd learned some things before 2013, but I started really focusing, and I still to this day will think about, you know, various pronunciation things. It's just more on the level of like how to make a sentence really flare well, or how to, you know, make sure that you use the right tone of voice, which is different than just the tones. You know, it's like sort of that type of thing but it's all just a process. It comes, I think, if you set the foundation well, then all those things eventually become easy. Like, it's funny because learning any language, essentially what you have is a huge list of tasks that you need to do like 10 to 20 times each before you become competent in them. But can you make that process of that happening fun? And if you set the foundation well, then that process can actually feel, I mean, learning, if you're doing it well, it feels really good, right? So it's like, but it doesn't feel good when you're not sure if you're on the right path. So hopefully that's what we set you up for. So then, okay, so you finish pronunciation mastery and you go into our wacky way of learning characters that involves imagining yourself in different places and all of that. So when you started doing the Mandarin Blueprint method, and specifically the Henslin movie method, what were your thoughts about it initially? Have you had any past experience with using mnemonics to learn, you know, various things?
Well, so it's interesting. You know, I was thinking through this before the talk, and you know, when I first ran across the method and was looking into it, to me, I was like, I was a little skeptical, you know, because I'm like, okay, is this another one of these where it's okay, you're going to talk to me for you know, 17 lessons about memory palaces and how to build them and all this stuff. And then I'm going to end up knowing, you know, a lot about superficial memory palace theory and not much about Mandarin.
Right, right.
You know, so I walked in kind of skeptical, but honestly, the way it's sort of broken down, and after working through the first few times on how it goes, and with the explanations about why you're doing the certain parts of it, right? Why the different components in a scene are there and how they interact.
Mm-hmm.
It's like ridiculously straightforward and simple and effective,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and you know, not to sound like a spiel about this, but it really is. Looking back, you know, I every so often think back to some of the earlier days in this, and you know, it does take a little setup, but again, the way you sort of have laid everything out there, where it's very much a stepwise building block process. I think that makes it very, very effective.
Yeah. We figured that the best thing to do is just break it down into its simplest parts. And then eventually, once you know how it works, we don't need to hold your hand quite as much. But, you know, the idea is just that. But then what happened is that all these people kept giving us their mnemonics. They were sharing them with us sharing them with everybody in the comments section. We were like, oh, well, we can keep helping people even further in. But our initial thing was like, for the first 105 characters, we'll walk you meticulously through every little thing, and then we'll say run free. But at that, what's happened is that after 105 characters, so many people have left great suggestions, and we just share those in the podcast, and then they end up on the course as well. And so it's like, it's even not just us anymore in terms of that, which is great, because, you know, when we think about, we learned from a book, Remembering the Simplified Hands by James Heisig, and that was fine, but it had some obvious missing parts, and of course it didn't have anybody giving their suggestions. So if James Heisig gave a suggestion that we didn't follow or identify with or whatever, it's just like, okay, you're on your own to figure it out. And so yeah, I can understand that. So like, at what point do you think that your skepticism kind of melted away?
You know, probably around 10th, 11th, 12th character, somewhere around there, where I suddenly realized that these characters were sticking with me.
Mm-hmm.
And that, you know, I could just be walking around during the day and I would flash back to a character I had learned, like the first or second one, and it just was there, right? Mm-hmm. You know, that started to sort of make me think, okay, they might be onto something. Now let's wait and see after I get maybe to 30 or 40. Am I still going to retain this, or is it just the fact that I've only got 10 floating around my head right now?
Sure.
You know, and then it just, the more I kept cramming in there, the more I kept retaining, and I was pretty much sold. I mean, you get up to about character, you know, 40 or 50, and by that point, it's, you know, if you're trying to do just rote memorization, I don't really think it would stick as much as it was. And
right.
That combined with the fact that it was just fairly effortless to
Mm-hmm.
bring some of these back to recall, that's what sold me.
Sure. Yeah. It's definitely, you know, one of the things that we learned in August, because we ran a little sale on lifetime access, which I saw that you also took part in. So thank you for that. And we learned during that time, we were like, you know, the type of people who do well with Mandarin Blueprint are those that give it at least, you know, a month or two, or at least a good few weeks of like doing it every day, because it takes a little bit to understand the value proposition in it. Like we can try our best in our marketing materials to be like, this is why it's good. But at the end of the day, you kind of have to feel it. You have to experience it. You have to go into your memory palace. And then, like you say, get to character 40 and go, I still remember them, you know? And then that's the point where you go, oh, well, if I did this for, you know, 1,500 characters, and I hope that we can eventually get it all the way to all the material in the HSK 6 and all that, then it's just a matter of showing up every day. Because it's like, that confidence is so key. I remember when I was learning Chinese, obviously like everybody else at the beginning, I was like, can I really do this? Is this stupid? What am I, you know, am I going to find myself asking, but am I going to just be kidding myself that I tried to learn the hardest language in the world? And then eventually, once I realized that the character learning system was working, and then like the next step for me really getting confidence was realizing how much of an advantage that was, that I was learning characters, because I was seeing all the people around me learning Chinese in the sort of traditional way in university or with tutors, and they just were focusing so little on characters, not enough on characters. And so I started to realize, wait a second, if you learn the characters, the language feels so simple. It's like, especially simple sentences, you're like, well, this is just like caveman speak, most of the time, if you know the constituent parts. If you don't know the constituent parts, though, I mean, it's so confusing. So once I realized that the way I was approaching it was going to make my life easier, I obviously wasn't even close to fluent or literate yet, but I knew I was going to succeed. And that was like a huge, once you get to that point, then it's what they say, give a man a why and he can bear almost any how. I was just like, I got it at this point. So,
yeah, it's, I mean, it's interesting. I've gone back and picked up some older sort of grade school or probably early grade school Chinese books for Chinese kids.
mm-hmm.
Right. And sort of looked at some of the sentences there thinking, oh, maybe I can read some of this now. And sure, there are bits and pieces, but it's still sort of almost like they're starting with like, here's a bunch of sentences or match this to that
Mm-hmm.
and just learn this, and to me, it's, I don't know, I feel like I'm getting a lot more value out of the system in Mandarin Blueprint, just because now that I'm on to simple sentences, all these characters that I spent all this time learning, all of a sudden it's like I can just look at them and go, oh, well, I know that one and that one and that one, and okay, I can kind of get an idea of what's going on here now.
Yeah.
And that sort of success, that reward factor that comes
Mm-hmm.
out of that, that's like totally helpful. I mean, I can like walk around in my neighborhood now and just look at random signs on some of the Chinese markets and things and go, oh, okay, I know what that means. I know what that
Mm-hmm.
means. I don't know what the whole sign means, but at least that, again, that simple reward mechanism is still there.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's that's I was been watching a lot of podcasts lately with neuroscientists, and this guy was explaining that he was saying that dopamine, our sense of it is a little bit simplistic in the sense that we go, oh, it's the reward chemical that we get and it feels good, and he's like that's kind of correct, but what's even more accurate way of describing dopamine is that dopamine is the chemical that gets released when what you're doing is motivating you to continue towards your goal, and that does feel good. But like if you've set something up that you are trying to achieve and you're successfully achieving it, dopamine is the chemical that gets released. So it's like, it definitely, we tried to make the course such a way so that each little step is a little victory, and okay, well, for sure, I'm going to need to know this character. I must need to know it. It's a high frequency character. It's a major part of the language. So if you succeed in learning it and then you learn a word from it and you go, oh, this word means to read a book, or this word means to wait for a moment, or this word means etc. It's like, okay, yeah, that's going to be something I'm going to need. So of course it feels, good to win, make those little wins. And then you just keep having little wins every day for a couple of years, and next thing you know, you can understand everything. So it's quite a fun process for sure.
I'd agree.
Yeah. So let's talk about individual character learning. So what these days, now that you're in level 15, so that's like what, about 130 characters or so around there, and it looks like level 15 is 144 characters. So at that point, you've done 144 mnemonic scenes. Maybe there were a few characters you knew before or something, but around that. So how long now do you feel like it takes to land on a make a movie lesson page, put all the pieces together, and come up with your scene to memorize the character?
Yeah.
On average.
And I'd definitely say less than a minute. Sometimes it's just seconds, depending on the character and sort of the props that are in there. Sometimes it just springs right to mind. Other times I have to think about it a little bit, but not less than a minute for the most part. Really, the slowest part is entering it into Anki.
Yep.
Putting the scene in there, and I've got a system where I'll like color code certain words, like that go with the symbols for one thing, and so when it pops up on the slide deck, it's easier to remember, to recall and look at. But yeah, less than a minute, no problem.
Nice. Do you always write down the scene?
I do, because to me, it's one of these things where, in the case where we're down the road, I can't recall a particular item in the scene or particular, way things might be positioned. I'd like to have it there so that I can review it. Also, by writing it down, it helps sort of fix it. I'm forced to visualize it as I'm writing it. And so that to me reinforces the scene a little bit more right at that initial point of learning the character.
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have
it
little
works for
doubt
me.
that in the moment it can help, but I will just make a suggestion for, since you're going to continue to expand and you're going to continue to get more characters in sentences and then sentences in paragraphs, and you get into phase 4 and beyond, that uh because the purpose of the Hens of Movie method is to bridge the gap between the time you first see the character and don't know it exists and don't even know it's a thing, to seeing it in context and never forgetting it again. Like, so in the same way that at some point in your childhood, you figured out what table means or what orange means or what cat means. And you never, it's like, you got it for life, right? Uh, there is, because the way Mandarin Blueprint does it, we try to make it so that it's like you have a scene that's strong enough to get you to remember the flashcard a few times, and then we show it to you in a word, and then we show it to you in a sentence, and then we show it to you in a paragraph. It may be that you don't need to remember the scene even all that long. Like, you might forget the scene 2 weeks from now, but because you had the scene held you, like, it tided you over long enough so that you could see it in context a number of times, and then you just have it, because then you're going to continue to see it in context as you move forward. And so, because that's true, because you're going to also get top layer enforcement of the fact, I think you can experiment a little bit with just trying to remember the scene and then move on. I'm not saying you can do it however you want, of course, but like, that will be a little bit more efficient if you're able to do that. And I believe that you will be able to, should you want to. I mean, obviously, writing it down, I'm sure that enforces the scene, but you could consider that as a, because like you say, it's the slowest part, writing it into Anki. So
Well, yeah, and I mean that is a good point. I mean, and there are definitely characters now where that sort of need to look at the scene or anything really isn't there, right? I see the character and just the strokes alone, it just springs to mind, right? It's sort
sure.
of same thing as in English.
Yeah.
That being said, the progression, the pace of progression that I have in the course, just given the other constraints on my time, is fairly
Mhm.
slow. So for me, it's like if I'm getting through, however many characters in a week, there's sort of a level that I try to keep it at that works. So I mean, but I
Mhm.
definitely will experiment. I mean, and like you said, I mean, hopefully, another 100 characters or so down the road, I am at the point where I can be just looking at a character, make the scene, and move on.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And the other thing too is that the idea, at least sort of what memory athletes would say about this type of thing. Um, I was watching a little video of a memory competition the other day, which is about the most boring thing you'll ever see, because it's just a bunch of people with sunglasses on and ear coverings just standing there, like,
Yep,
with their eyes closed. But
I've seen the
um,
documentaries.
yeah, but what they would say is that if you're setting up your scene, and of course you're going to continue to get better at the different scenes, and you're probably at a point now where you can start considering things like, what the memory athletes all say, sure, yeah, like violence and sexuality, they're memorable, but they're also kind of beginner techniques. When you get better, it's more about like making the scene remind you of a deeply emotional thing that happens in life. It could just be even a deeply emotional scene from a movie that you saw that, pulled on your heartstrings or something, or it could be an actual experience you had. But the idea is that they're saying, why do you remember that in the first place? Is it because you wrote it down? Like, no, it's that you just remember it because the things that happened are inherently memorable. So if you can manage to sort of hack that process and make it happen in the scene, I think, what's it called? Oh, see, of course, I can't remember which one of the memory athletes it was who said this. I think it might have been Joshua Foer, but he said he started off, or maybe it was, well, whoever it was, he started off his speech saying, imagine that you're standing out your front door and 100 naked people are running at you with chainsaws. And it's like, that would obviously be rather intense. And it's like, I never needed, even though I couldn't remember his name, I never needed to remember that scene. Like, I never needed to write that down. Let me just make sure I remember what he said there about the naked people
Right.
running at me with chainsaws. Like, that's inherently memorable. So it's the kind of thing where, if you, as you get better at it, I'm sure that you could forgo the writing if you wanted to. But still, if you're taking it slow, I get your point. Is like, well, if you only have time to do a character or two, and then maybe tomorrow you don't have time to do anything, then you might as well write it down, and it'll be easier to remember. So as you've been moving through so far, not that you have to, but if you could boil it down to maybe 2 or 3 points about the course that you find to be the most impactful, and anything from pronunciation mastery all the way through to where you are now, to
Mhm.
Anki or whatever. What have you found to be the most impactful so far?
So, I mean, definitely, like we talked about earlier, the pronunciation mastery just in general, like as a big chunk, right? I
Hmm.
think that to me um, made a big impact just because of the whole foundation and the comfort level provided with the sounds and the characters and just the whole sort of general building blocks that I was going to be working with over
Hmm.
time. Um,
Yeah.
as I've gotten more into the foundation course stuff, the native speaker audio
Hmm.
to me has been a really key part because sort of hearing the difference in sort of the range and the speed with which they say the words between Annie and I don't remember his name, but
Jerry.
um, Jerry. Um, so hearing that sort of variation, especially like they'll say some sentences a certain way, or maybe others they recorded at a different time, and so it comes out a different way. And that sort
Hmm.
of variation, comparing how I sound relative to them, especially now in the sentences, for
Hmm.
me, seeing how the different um, subparts of the sentence all link together acoustically,
Yeah.
right? And how they flow from one, maybe pair or triplet of characters into the next. They seem to be linked in very distinct ways, and how the pacing is. That's
Mm.
been a huge benefit to me. Just sort of trying to mimic that and emulate what they're doing.
Mm.
Um, and then the chat boards. I mean, really, like you talked about, just getting other ideas from people. So the occasional scene where I might get stuck, not quite have a good idea, or I come up with one I don't really like it. Scrolling through what people have posted on there,
Yeah.
sometimes will trigger a better idea, and I'll just, I don't think there's anything wrong with wholeheartedly plagiarizing from people's ideas.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, it's only in your
from
head.
that,
It's not like you're making
exactly.
money off it.
Nope.
So yeah.
Um, so both the input there, and then also using those chat boards to post questions to the two of you. Just the
Mhm.
response rate back on those things has been great for little points that may have bugged me about certain things.
Yeah.
So the chat boards definitely.
Yeah. Oh, that's great to hear. Well, that was going to be my next question. So yeah, because for us, it's invaluable that the communication that everybody has with us, because it just gives us what do people want? What is it that they keep asking about? And if they keep asking about something, then it means we need to make something to cover that point. And then, it also gives us a chance to give people direct access to us, so they don't feel like they're alone. Like, it's like, we can't, obviously we're only two guys, so we can't be everybody's individual tutor, but we can at least be the coaches to be like, okay, you're not clear on this point, so let me either write an article about it or just give you a quick video response, or maybe it's a simple question, I can just write a sentence or two. But it just makes such a difference for us as a compass to know where to go next. I mean, obviously we have our grand plans for the course that we've had since the beginning, but like there's so many little things that we would have never thought to do if it weren't for the people in the course asking about it. So it's been really valuable. And so, are there any other elements of the sort of community aspect? Do you ever take time on the forum? I can't remember if I've seen you on there.
Probably not. I mean, I typically I'm not someone who participates a lot in sort of the chat boards and the forums. I tend to
Sure.
just sort of get in, look at the content. I might sort of browse and lurk behind and read some of the stuff, but typically, no, I don't.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but now that I have, put a few questions out there, I think going forward, it's probably something I will try to leverage more. Just, um, from what I've seen and reading it, from listening to other users' experiences, some of these similar sort of interview sessions with them, and how they've provided feedback and gotten benefit from the community sessions
Mm-hmm.
sections. Um, yeah, I think going forward, I probably will. I just
Mm-hmm.
think it's something I personally have not utilized so far.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. Yeah, it's totally fine. I mean, obviously, it's the community forum is funny. That was something we just the platform we run it on, Kajabi. They just one day were like, "Hey, we have a forum option now," and we were like, "All right." So we set it up, and we we didn't really think much about it. I think one day Luke did like a quick and dirty, like, "Okay, we'll make a help topic, make an Anki topic, and like make a introduce yourself topic or something, and then we'll just set this up." And then every day we get a few posts now, and it's very cool, especially because one of the things that Luke and I were worried about a little bit was what's going to happen if we, get loads of people coming in and the amount of questions coming in each day is overwhelming. And so far it hasn't become overwhelming, partially because of the forum. It's like people are so nice. Like they'll answer questions and they're under no
Yeah.
obligation to answer anybody else's question. And yet somebody will be like, I'm having this problem with Anki. And like, I'll see the question come into our email when I wake up, and then I'll go to the question. I'll see that 3 people have already responded with the perfect answer. And I'm just like, wow, that's great. It's very nice of people to do. So the community aspect has been good. So how about, where we can improve? So as you've been going through, what have you thought about that you're like, okay, I'd like to see this upgraded or whatever, or this, I feel like this section here is not complete, or I want this thing, anything like that you think we could do to improve the course?
Yeah, I was looking back through it. So I guess for full disclosure, I think there are parts of the site that maybe I haven't fully taken advantage of or even really found. Like, for example, I was wondering about the search capabilities of it. And so before this call, I jumped on there and I did some quick searching for things and realized it's actually a little bit more powerful than I realized. So that's just maybe me not taking advantage. So, that said, maybe there might be some ways to sort of make more obvious some of the full functionality of the site. I kind of tend to get a little heads down and I'm like, I'm in this lesson, just progress to that button that says mark completed and move to the next lesson.
Right.
And I know there's the stuff on the sidebar, which is useful. One thing I would like to see is every so often there's a particular lesson which I find has really useful information in it. And it might be a video part I want to go back and listen to, or there's something in the comments even. I tend to just add that as a bookmark in my browser. It would almost be nice to have a favorites tag for different parts of the course that you could go back to.
Right.
That was sort of internal to the course as opposed to a bookmark in a browser.
Right. Yeah. That's a good idea. I wonder if that's technically possible with what we're doing, but yeah, that's definitely worth looking into, because I agree. Like, I always thought of it. Yeah, you could bookmark stuff, but it's a good point. If it were internal to the course, you could just have my favorites somewhere that's easy to access from like the toolbar at the top or something. That could be a great idea. Yeah, I'll look into that. I'll see if that's possible.
Okay. And then the one other thing, and this has come up fairly recently for me, is, and I think I threw a question out to you about sentence structures. And I totally get the whole thing. Like, the more we see it, the more we'll understand, and just sort of roll with the punches and go with it. And that, it makes sense. I've got that. You talked about this in one of the podcasts about some of us are wired to have that, I got to know why thing. And that's fine,
Me too.
But what might be nice is, the first few times we run across maybe a new sentence structure, just to even highlight it, so that visually we see like, oh, here is this sort of structure that you're going to be running into now. Don't even have to explain it, just at least sort of just a little highlighted thing that's like, okay, pay attention because this is something you're going to start seeing more of, and just a little sort of bell like that. That might be nice. For me, it would be helpful.
Yeah. I was thinking, some really simple thing I could do in, say, level 13 when you first get to sentences is just put little indicators of where the words are separated in the sentence. Because obviously Chinese is just a wall of text. And obviously, if you know the words, it's easier than people think to be able to tell where the borders are between words. But sometimes, you can, put the border in the wrong place and the sentence is incomprehensible. And then all you have to do is just switch the border and you go, oh, suddenly it clicks. So I was thinking maybe in level 13, the first thing I could do is just go through all the sentences and just make sure there's like a little, there's this one character in Chinese typing that's just like a little dot that goes right in the middle between 2 characters, and like it kind of separates them. I was thinking maybe I do that and just make it clearer. Okay, this is where we're saying, mama de pengyo, right? It's like sort of put that space in there so it's like that's where the border is. So yeah, that would be a good idea to kind of make that clear. And I have thought many times that in level 13, maybe what we should do is have in all of the sentence lessons that kind of hold your hand mentality with them. Like literally every sentence we go, okay, well, how does this one go? And what's this one about? And then obviously stop doing that as you move forward. But in the very early part, have it be kind of like the Henza movie method is the beginning, but for sentences. And, the only thing I worry about with that is just that I know how it feels when you have seen a sentence several times and you sort of get it, and then you're hit with the explanation. It can feel really good. So it's kind of like if you can hold off that gratification a little bit, but then, the grammar lessons were still in process of making them among the many other things that we're doing. So we have we have several great grammar lessons, but we have many more planned. So I think that having some more stuff at the beginning could be a great way to get people, like yourself who want to know the why, and like myself who want to know the why, just having a little bit more there for them. So that makes sense.
Yeah.
Right, nice.
I mean, truthfully though, with the sentence stuff, it's a little bit painful right up front when we first jump into sentences, but part of the fun is that struggle of trying to figure out what's going on in these things, and right. It's, you get kind of lost, but then eventually you're like, okay, I kind of get what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So the one other thing I might just throw out there is some of these sentences, there are words that have alternate meanings.
Mm-hmm.
That can sort of throw you for a loop when you're trying to figure out what's going on in the sentence. And I think they typically are pointed out, or someone will have a question in the comment section, and then it'll be answered there.
Mm-hmm.
But if there are those sorts of things, that can be helpful to sort of make it a little more efficient to say, okay, this is just an alternate meaning for this character we've already run into. And
right.
I'm not trying to figure out why gan doesn't mean dry in this sentence. It means something else.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. Yeah, that question has come up a lot, and it's like, I totally agree. And I think that for now, as people are going through the course, like you said, the best thing to do if you run across something like that is just ask the question in the comments, because if everybody does that, it will naturally sort itself out, because we'll answer them, and then like next thing you know, it's So I always encourage people, if they're like, wait, what is this about, to ask. And so and then in the case of something like, we had a couple, for example. The alternate pronunciation of le, which is liao, which means like to finish up something. And so like there's a lot of times you'll have a sentence that includes a word like I'm trying to think of an example for where you are in the course. Okay, yeah, if you've just entered level 15, that would mean that you've recently learned the character dung, which means to wait. So dung bu liao would mean I can't wait. But I cannot, the process of waiting cannot be finished up, right? So deng bu liao, right? And so that's the kind of thing that we know you'll get as you move forward, because it comes up all the time, but it's not the primary pronunciation of le, because the primary pronunciation is obviously the grammatical particle that comes up, in almost every sentence practically. And so we had people asking like, wait a second, what's this about? And we realized, okay, we need to make sure that we cover this in a more explicit way earlier in the course. And so, yeah, I always, we're always looking for stuff like that. And, there's another thing that happens, like we just, there is a degree of, at some point, you have to just build up your foundation enough so that you can read and let the context teach you stuff. So eventually the language, you get good enough at the language can teach itself to you by reading it, because there are so many words and little iterations of words. It's like, if you think, for example, low frequency words are low frequency, but how many low frequency words are in 1,000 character paragraph or article, I should say? Well, probably about 10% of the article contains a bunch of words that on their own are very low frequency. And so if you were to take the time to learn all of them meticulously bottom up, then that would just take forever. But if you can manage to figure them out because of the context, like every day I read all of I like to read the Chinese news, because I'm just curious, what's the difference between what the Western media is saying versus what the Chinese media is saying. I don't really trust either of them, but like, it's just interesting to see what they're saying. And so I read the Chinese, and all the time there's a word that I technically haven't seen before, but because I know the characters and I can see the surrounding context, I can figure out, what it means. Occasionally I can't, but then that's always interesting to me. I'm like, oh wow, what's that word? And it would be great if we could just cover literally everything. But then I think about that, and I go, not only would learning that take forever, building a course around every little detail like that would take my whole life. But hey, maybe I'll do that. But yeah, so anyway, I totally get that. And we want to, it's striking that balance between being like, listen, some things you're going to have to figure out on your own, but then some things, if we can point them out, it'll just make it all the easier for you. So that's always the balance we're trying to strike. So those are some great suggestions, Chris. Thank you.
Sure.
So I guess finally, would you recommend Mandarin Blueprint to somebody who is either starting to learn Chinese or just looking to get better?
100%. I mean, it just, with all the times that I've tried to learn and the different techniques that I've tried, both just random books, just online things, for me, this course is just head and shoulders above anything I've run into. Not only is it sort of true to what it says in all the stuff I found online, the reviews and the advertising, it's covers all these different components for pronunciation and basic, learning the characters and all that. But I think a key part is that the pacing is entirely up to me.
Mm-hmm.
So what I have time for, what I have mental capacity for, be it that I'm tired from work or I'm just, feeling really enthusiastic, I can decide how much I want to learn in a given day, week, month. That makes it actually a lot easier to progress, I've found. So
Mm-hmm.
yes, wholeheartedly, I would recommend Mandarin Blueprint.
Well, thank you very much, sir. And if anybody's interested in learning more, you can go over to mandarinblueprint.com. Thank you, Chris, for taking the time to speak with us today. And we'll see you on the course. And if you finish the foundation course at some point over the next year or so, maybe we can get back on a call and we can see how you're doing at that point. So that's the end of level 36. So a few more, about twice as many levels to go, but I'm sure that you'll get there. So hopefully we can speak again at that point. And of course, we'll speak on the course. So thanks so much.
All right. Good talking to you.